Yeah. Well, that was a disaster weekend, guys. That's the worst the car's ever been.
With these harsh words, Lewis Hamilton summed up his frustration after yet another disappointing Grand Prix. What's happening at Mercedes? Why is one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history begging for his last season with the team to end soon? Brazil was the stage for another sad chapter in this story. Hamilton, visibly shaken, described the car as undrivable and admitted that his only joy over the weekend was driving Senna's car and receiving the support of the Brazilian crowd. But are these struggles just a coincidence, or is there more behind the issues faced by the Brit? Problematic upgrades, denied requests, and questionable team decisions during such a crucial moment in Hamilton's career. The 2024 Brazilian GP exposed a reality that Hamilton has been trying to disguise for months. After crossing the finish line in a modest 10th place, the 7-time world champion couldn't hold back his frustration. The car feels like a wooden plank. It has no suspension, bouncing on the tires everywhere, and I can't accelerate anywhere. The situation has become so critical that Hamilton spent the race merely fighting to keep the car on track. Onboard footage showed a driver constantly struggling with an unstable car that seemed to have a mind of its own in the corners. The strain wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. This was definitely the worst driving we've had, especially in the corners. So tough. I could easily take a vacation now, Hamilton admitted, a statement revealing his deep discouragement. The only joyful moment that weekend came when Hamilton got to drive Senna's McLaren, his idol's car. What makes this situation even more intriguing is that the problems appear to have a solution that Mercedes insists on ignoring. In Austin, 2 weeks before the Brazilian GP, Hamilton had already warned the team about the car's issues and requested to start from the pit lane, given his struggles in qualifying. This would have allowed significant setup changes. The request was denied. The story repeated itself in Brazil. Hamilton suggested fundamental changes to the car, including adjustments to the suspension and general setup. And once more, the team opted to keep him on track with a car he described as the worst I've ever driven. James Allison, Mercedes' technical director, tried to justify the decision, citing budget cap limitations and technical constraints, but these explanations seem unconvincing. Before the Brazilian GP, Hamilton said, "I have no hope for the race. I'll do what I can. With the car I have now, it's the worst I've ever driven, so I probably won't get very far with it." Unfortunately, this prophecy came true. It's hard to believe that this is the same driver who once turned things around and stood at the top of the podium. At the start of the 2024 season, Hamilton had issues, but as the season progressed, it seemed that Mercedes was on the right track with the car. Hamilton showed his class with impressive wins at Silverstone and Spa, proving he still had the talent and speed that made him a legend. The decline began after the summer break, coinciding with new updates to the W15. What should have been a step forward turned into 2 steps back. The car lost stability, the driver's confidence plummeted, and results started to dwindle. In Austin, Hamilton had his worst result in years, with an early Q1 exit followed by a DNF in the race. Since then, the situation has only worsened. The 7-time champion is accumulating disappointing results and increasingly frustrated statements. "The end can't come soon enough," he vented after the Brazilian GP, a sentence that perfectly sums up the current situation. Meanwhile, his teammate George Russell, despite facing similar challenges, seems able to get more out of the car, raising questions about potential differences in treatment within the team. This issue of unequal treatment brings us to one of the most concerning aspects of this story. An intriguing part of this story is the performance disparity between the 2 Mercedes cars. While Hamilton struggles with an undrivable car, George Russell achieves more consistent results with theoretically identical equipment. Sure, there was Russell's accident that required him to revert to older configurations, but still, it doesn't make sense. It's the same team, and they had time to fix the car. In Brazil, for example, Russell finished 4th, while Hamilton barely kept the car on track. Do you remember when an anonymous email suggested sabotage? Sent to the F1 and FIA leadership, implied possible sabotage on Hamilton's car. The situation was so serious that Mercedes reported it to the police. Although the investigations found no evidence of wrongdoing, the episode exposed internal team tensions. Recently, Hamilton commented, One of the cars is working much better. A seemingly innocent statement, but one that carries significant weight given the context. Mercedes continues to insist that both drivers receive equal treatment, but the numbers and performances tell a different story. We are witnessing something beyond a mere slump. Hamilton is a driver who has built an extraordinary F1 legacy with 103 wins and 7 world titles. His partnership with Mercedes produced historic moments and redefined the sport's boundaries. But now, in his final season with the team, this story risks ending in a melancholy way. What's most concerning is Hamilton's shift in attitude. Known for his determination and optimism, he now speaks openly about not caring about his standings. "I don't care if I finish ahead or behind George. It doesn't make much difference to me. I just want to keep the car off the wall and try to score points for the team if I can," he said after the Brazilian GP. This is not just a story of a driver facing technical difficulties. It's about how one of F1's greatest partnerships is ending inappropriately, leaving a bitter taste for fans and most of all for Hamilton himself. It's worth noting that this situation doesn't just affect Hamilton and Mercedes, but also leaves a mark on Formula One itself. We're talking about a driver who broke barriers, inspired millions, and elevated the sport to new heights. His victories and titles are only a part of his legacy. The way this story is ending raises important questions about how teams treat their historic drivers. Is Mercedes, in its rush to prepare its future with Russell and Kimi, forgetting to properly honor its past with Hamilton? These are questions that will go unanswered, but will certainly be part of the reflections on this final chapter. With only a few races left in the season, the time for redemption has nearly run out. And when I talk about redemption, it's not for Hamilton, but for Mercedes. They have the responsibility to give Hamilton an ending worthy of his greatness. However, the recent statements from the driver and the team's apparent lack of solutions suggest this story might end differently than everyone hoped. The irony is that while Hamilton counts down the days to leave Mercedes, his future team, Ferrari, shows clear signs of progress. Perhaps that's the only consolation for the 7-time champion, knowing a new chapter awaits in 2025. Until then, there's only the sadness of watching one of the sport's greatest drivers say goodbye in such a frustrating way to a team where he wrote glorious pages in motorsport history. It's a shame that Hamilton's last dance with Mercedes, a partnership that redefined modern F1, is ending this way. As he himself said, looking beyond 2024, "I can't wait for Christmas." A phrase that says it all about how one of the greatest drivers in history is being forced to end his chapter at Mercedes. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.